Well, this has been an interesting week going into this next week here. Uh, we got some interesting games coming up and some pretty lopsided, one-sided games. World Playoffs is coming up, and this is Sports Hour. Well, it has been an interesting last week. We are here in week. I don't even know what week we're in. I guess I probably should have put that up before I did this. Sorry, having difficulties. We are in week. Moving into week 14. All right, so week 14 is going to be some. It's going to be kind of interesting. It's going to be kind of weird too. But we're going to talk more about the more playoffs into this segment as well. But let's talk about what happened with last week. Last week, we had some wins. Panthers won by quite a bit, and there were a few teams that were actually won, even though they were supposed to lose. The Jets won. They were favored only by a little. They were favored in that game, but most of us thought that it was probably better for the Tigers going to win. Tigers did not win that one. Misunderstanding that. So the Tigers didn't win there. Bulldogs were favored by only by a little bit. They won. Huskies absolutely demolished the Beagles. And then of course the Indians win against the Angels. And the game of the week, the Knights were able to beat out the Chargers. There are quite a few games still that were actually completely one side that shouldn't have ended in the same way. Most of them went pretty much the exact way they were supposed to go. One thing is the Packers might actually be able to come and win the division, which would be the first time they've even made the playoffs. So let's take a look with the. I've actually changed the situation a little bit here. This will actually show you the whole ranking for all the teams. Bears are last, and if they're eliminated, they'll be over here as well. Bears are the only team eliminated right now. Even the Falcons. If the Falcons do go undefeated up to this point and they win 3 games out, they'll be 6-9-1, which will barely get them into the playoffs. That's only, by the way, if they can beat the Giants. Otherwise, they will be eliminated. If they lose any games, they will be eliminated, and they cannot make it into the playoffs. As for these teams that are right after them, Legends, Kings, and Hawks, winning, if they lose, they won't be out necessarily, but they will probably be out if the Giants win. So if the Giants win, we're going to be losing all these teams here. All 4 of these teams, the Legends, the Kings, the Hawks, and the Falcons will all be eliminated if the Giants win. And they do have a pretty interesting week scheduled this week for it. On the other side here, we got 4 teams that are eliminated. The Dolphins are eliminated now. They can't make in. UNC is still has a possibility of making it into the playoffs. Unfortunately, it's still gonna be very tough for teams. UNC can't win the division right now. Tex can, so it comes down to a little bit off of aggregates. But right now, these teams are all eliminated. UNC and the Werewolves both must win out in order to be able to even make it into the playoffs. Currently, losing, or if there's 3 ways, if the Supermen or any one of these teams that's in the current wildcard position win, if two of those teams win, it probably will knock out these two teams, and very likely going to eliminate at least the Jets and the Lightning as well. It's not insured to eliminate either one of them, but it's possible. And as it is, there's a lot of teams that are just eliminated from even be able to. I apologize for that. There are some teams that can't even win the division. I mean, if you're looking at the first division here, the NBL North, the Cardinals and Legends both cannot win that division, but then the Knights and Dogs can still technically do it, but they require them to win out and the Panthers to lose out, and that's not very likely. Panthers will already clinch the playoffs in that position. Over here, the Tigers have clinched. The Indians have clinched. The Browns may actually clinch this. Actually, have clinched their division. Even with there's only 3 weeks left, so even with all that, they have clinched their division, which means we already know 3 of the leaders for the NBL. We don't necessarily know who the top division is going to be at the NBL North. We do know that certain things will happen for that. It's also very likely that all 3 of these teams will not make it into the playoffs itself. Over here, we don't know still. I mean, for now, we still have any of these 3 teams could technically do it. It would require the Lynx to win out for them to win the division. Packers don't have to win out. They just have to win 1 game. They're not 1 game behind. They're only 1 game behind. Looking at the rest of these, it could be a possibility that the Packers could, in theory, win the division. No one knows what's going to happen in that division. As for the ABL West is locked. The Huskies will make it into the playoffs, and they will probably have the number 1 seed. They will have the number 1 seed if the Otters lose. If the Otters lose, they will be locked in the number 1 seed, which does not mean anything really, because remember, there's actually no buys in this format of these. I don't know if we have the playoffs somewhere over here now. No, we do. I'm going to go ahead and I think open this up. We don't know who's going to be in each of those positions, but we do know that this is going to be happening this year. We will figure out those things later. I'll actually update those for next week. As for the ABL East, it's a close matchup between the Colts and the Tex. They're both battling for that position, and honestly, it's going to be very difficult to figure out who's going to win this week, who wins off of that. In likelihood, is both those teams will actually make it into the playoffs, even if it's Tex currently are 7th seed. They're not the highest seed right now, but they are in a good position just to make it into the playoffs, even if they don't quite do it. As for UNC, they technically can make it in with them winning out into the playoffs. They can't win the division. They're already too far behind from that. But they can make it into the playoffs. And it really comes down. What would have to happen in order for the teams here, these three teams, I'm going to go ahead and put them in a, let's put them in the, those three teams, those four teams here would all have to win out in order to be able to make it into the playoffs. Over here in the ABL North, it's a little more difficult because Giants are 6-6-1, which means anyone who's got, as long as there's 3 games left, these teams here all have to win out. All of them would have to win out at that point. But we still got to win it. Falcons technically do also have to win out in order to be able to make it into the playoffs, but they've got a little bit of a bonus here because of the fact of one other factor. The Falcons, there's no really hints. It comes down to this. I don't know why the Saints are. I should point out this is actually a little bit different. Did I do that wrong? 8 points minus 5.5. That's 2.5. Yeah. So I did this wrong. Saints can still technically make it off the context. Actually, that means take that back. Saints have not clinched. They haven't clinched a playoff spot either. They clinch if they win. Saints can still technically make it in. They're 2.5 games behind. And I just realized also these two teams could both actually do it as well if they win out. So I don't know why I did that. If the Browns win and the Saints don't win, then the Browns will clinch off of that. All right, let's talk about next week. Next week, we got some interesting games. I get to do my predictions as well. And I am very much in the lead by quite a bit. I have .777 percentage. So, yeah, it's going to be a pretty big game. We're going to start off with the Foxes and the Giants. Both teams are pretty similar in rating. This is a tough one for me. Giants are favored by 19. I just have to say I'm going to agree. I think the Giants are going to win this game. I think it's going to be closer than 19. I don't think it's going to be that far off. I think it's going to be a little bit better from that means knowing that the Giants are slightly better. As for the Tigers and Hawks game, that's no way the Tigers lose that game. The Tigers are absolutely going to demolish the Hawks. Sure, the Hawks have won last couple times, but it doesn't matter in this case. I think the Tigers will win this game. Packers and Ravens. Packers need to win this week. If they do not, they might be letting the auditors win. If the auditors do win, they will probably knock them at least in a position they're going to be very difficult to get back. They would have to win out in order to do it. I'm going to pick the Packers here. I do think the Packers, again, I do not want to do that. I think the Packers win this game. As for, we have the Indians and the Pirates. I think it's very fair to say the Indians will absolutely demolish them. The Indians have the #1 defense in the league. Pirates currently have 12th and 17th, so they're not terrible, but they're not really in a position to win this game. I think the Indians are going to win. They're going to be 14. They're going to 14-0, which is in shock for me. We got the Union Cats and the Lightning. Looking back at the Lightning, Lightning here are terrible in both positions. The Union Cats are good and really good at both positions. No. I think no way the New England Cats lose this game. Cats win this game. Whereas in the Athens, this is actually going to be a tough game. They actually are they have an equal power ranking when it comes to this thing. It comes down to me. This is actually a really tough game for me. Athens are favored by 1 because they have a better record. They have the same points otherwise. I'm actually going to say right now, I do think there's a better chance that the Werewolves are going to be able to come away with a win here. I'm going to go with the Werewolves to win this game. I do think that it's going to be a very tough battle. Wouldn't be surprised if this game goes to overtime. We got the Warriors and the Otters. Can I just say the Otters no. There's no chance the Otters don't win that game. Kings and Huskies. Again, I have to say the Huskies are going to win this game. They're 13-0. They're going to be 14-0. Kings are just not good. We got the Cardinals and the Panthers. Here's the situation for the Panthers. Panthers win. They lock a division. It doesn't matter what happens with the Kings, with the Knights, or the Kings because they will be too far ahead. If it doesn't even matter. The Panthers winning this game will put them in a position where they will not be able to be caught, which means if, however, the Panthers do lose and the King and the Knights and the Dogs both win, then there's a chance, and I'll say there's a chance that the Panthers still lose the division. But winning this week is very key, and I think they're going to be able to beat they're going to be able to beat the Cardinals. Panthers win this week. We got the game of the week, Knights and Dogs. See, here's the problem. There's the problem. Knights and Dogs play this week. They're the game of the week, divisional matchup. Winner, if the Panthers lose, and if the Panthers lose, and the winner of that game can still take the division. If the Panthers don't lose, then it comes down to basically both of them are going to be in the playoffs. They're not both in the playoffs currently, technically, but they're both in a position where they would be in the playoffs if they is. I mean, looking at this, I don't know if they actually get eliminated from the playoffs. Looking at this, I believe actually they are both. If a win, whoever wins is locked into the playoffs. Whoever loses isn't locked, but is likely to make it in. If they tie, they're both in. So it comes down to this because they both become 9-3, 9-3-1. And it will also come down to whether whether 2 of these teams lose. If 2 of these teams lose here, any of those 4 teams lose. If 2 of them lose, then they are locked in with a win. So it comes down to a lot of things. I have to say it's a tough one for me. I'm going to favor the Dogs here. I think the Dogs have a slightly better team going in. I do think the Knights have a very good chance to win this game. And we're looking at the Knights and Dogs. The Knights are better overall, but they both have pretty decent defenses. I think it's going to come down to really who's going to score. I'm going to go with the Dogs here, and I might be selling my ticket to being insured to first. We got the Legends and the Saints. I don't see this Legends doing it. Legends are actually, I think, already eliminated from the playoffs, if I remember correctly. Not quite. Losing this week will knock them out of the playoffs. Any teams that lose here will be out of the playoffs. If any of these 4 teams lose, they're out of the playoffs. If they win, they still stand a chance. I got rid of the position where you have teams on the block and just shows you all things. Let me put it this way. All these teams are on the block right now. So they must win or they're out. That's basically off of it. We got the Bears and the Colts. Colts win this game. There's just no way the Colts don't win. Stars and Beagles. If the Stars somehow come back and win one game, then I will be shocked. I don't see the Beagles allowing that away, especially since the Beagles are favored by 50. So that's a pretty big margin. We got the Jets and the Dragons. This is a tough one. Jets are favored by 20. In my opinion, this is going to be a tough one. I'm going to actually pick the Jets here, but I don't know that there's going to be much of a difference. In my opinion, this could go either way. UNC and the Dolphins. UNC is favored by 8. Probably could also be the game of the week if they weren't both terrible. Looking at the divisional matchups here, look, they're in the same division. They're also both won last week, so I'll point that out. They both won last week. They're both off of wins. Unfortunately, it's going to be tough for me to say. Looking at the last couple of weeks, this is tough. And I'm going to say right now, I'm going to go with UNC winning this game. I think UNC's going to have a slightly better chance of winning, but it could be either way for me. Bulldogs and the Browns. Browns win all day. Bulldogs are just not good enough. They could, surprise us in this week, but I think they're not going to win. We got the Falcons and Angels. Both these teams are terrible. They're still both terrible, but we're going to go with the Angels winning this game. I think the Angels just have what we take. Assuming the Chargers, another really tough game. They're in the same division. They're currently fighting for basically second place. And right now, that they're currently both in the playoffs, but a loss to the Supermen here. But either one of those teams losing might actually knock them down just out of the playoffs right now. Currently, the 8th are out of the playoffs. This could be a big game. And honestly, I would say this is probably reasonable to be the game of the week. But I'm going to say it's the tough one. I'm going to go with the Chargers here. I think the Chargers are going to be slightly better, and I think honestly, with the fact that the Supermen lose, might hurt them somewhat. We've got the Bobcats and the Texans. The Bobcats somehow come out and win this game, then I don't know. I just don't see them doing it. We got the Lions and Lynx. This is a tough one. Lynx are favored by 19. Both these teams are pretty close in position. Looking at the Lions and the Lynx, both of them are trying to fight. The Lions are out of are currently not in the playoffs. The Lynx are not in the playoffs either, but both of them are trying to fight. The Lynx winning will keep them alive in position to be able to make it to win the division. The Lions winning, it doesn't mean anything. They're already out of the possibility of winning the division. And if you look at the Lions are right now, they are currently 12th. They need to win out to get into the playoffs, and unfortunately, this is going to be very tough for them. I'm going to say I do not think it's going to be a favor to the Lions this week. I'm just going to have to say I'm going to go with the Lynx winning this game. All right, let's talk about the World Playoffs before we get into this thing, because I don't want to check seriously because I'm pretty sure I did this. Yes, I did. World Playoffs is a-coming. And here are the scheduled dates for the World Playoffs. June 22nd, which is we've got a long way to go before we get to that. We got about 2 months? 1, 2. Okay, not quite. About a little more than a month before we hit that. And this will show you how many games occur on those days. And you can see the times if you go to here for it. Now, the Eastern Division has not been decided yet because We haven't done it yet. Because the way the World Playoffs work, if you guys haven't seen these other videos, the World Playoffs, the first seed in our division is not necessarily the first seed here. It comes down to basically the first seed and the second seed will be decided on who gets into the finals, the final two, and then everyone else will be decided after that. So, for example, it basically comes down to record as well. Looking at it, if you looked at the first seed, nope, that's not what I need to do. If you look at the division right now, if it were to be decided today, it would be the Huskies and the Indians would be the number 1 and number 2 seeds. The Panthers would be the number 3 seed. The R's would be number 4. No, the Tigers would be number 4. It comes down to depending on the record. It also depends on how far they get into the playoffs. So, for example, now assuming that the best record always wins, then the Indians and Huskies. But let's assume that the Otters go all the way, and the Panthers go all the way. Whoever wins that game becomes the first seed, and that second seed is whoever loses in that game. And then the seeds go on after that. So obviously it has to, no, it's not obviously. It's not going to necessarily be the top 8 teams. Just because the top 8 teams made it into the playoffs does not mean they make it into the World Playoffs. That's just the basic idea. You can see all the games have been decided what days they are going to be on. It just comes down to this. The games all occur in it. And I will point out this. The rules are different in the World Playoffs as there are from the NPL. First off, there's no overtime. Overtime is held differently. The way it works is kind of weird. So the way it works is all the teams will play. But once this game gets to the end point, into the fourth quarter is over, then it goes to penalty points. Over the game, whatever point, if you get a penalty on your team, your team will get a penalty point. The other team gets those penalty points at the end of the game. And that will decide how you point. So basically, it still comes up to whoever wins. If it's tied to that point after the penalty points are over and done, then it goes to overtime. Kind of. The overtime rules are different in the NPL. It goes to basically first to score without a response wins. So basically, if you score a 2-pointer, the other team scores a 3-pointer, the game's over, then you lose. So for example, let's say that this game happened, and let's say we are in overtime. It's 89-89 somehow. The Mountaineers scored a 2, they score 3, the game's over, the Lakers or the Lakemen will move on. That's the basic point of how it works for it. It's a little more complicated. I didn't plan this, so just to let you guys know about how that works. That's it for Sports Hour. Thank you guys for watching. I will see you guys in the next video, and we'll see you guys next week for week 15.